The Mongol Empire in the 13th century was a vast and powerful force. It stretched across Asia and into Europe. Kublai Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, became the Great Khan in 1260. He completed the conquest of China, establishing the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan was an ambitious ruler. He sought to expand his empire further. Southeast Asia, with its rich resources and strategic location, became a key target for his expansionist policies. The Mongols were known for their skilled cavalry and brutal siege tactics. They had conquered many kingdoms, and few could resist their might. Their reputation often preceded them, causing fear among their enemies. Đại Việt, as Vietnam was then known, lay directly in the path of Mongol expansion. Kublai Khan saw Đại Việt as a stepping stone to control the rest of Southeast Asia. He demanded submission from the Tran dynasty, which ruled Đại Việt. The Vietnamese, however, had a long history of resisting foreign invaders. They valued their independence greatly. The terrain of Vietnam, with its mountains, forests, and numerous rivers, was also challenging for large invading armies, especially cavalry-based ones like the Mongols. This geographical factor would play a significant role in the conflicts that were to come. The Vietnamese people were prepared to defend their homeland. The first Mongol invasion of Đại Việt occurred in 1258. A Mongol army led by General Uriankadai crossed the border. The Mongols, with their superior numbers and battle-hardened troops, initially achieved success. They pushed southwards, aiming for the capital, Thang Long, which is modern-day Hanoi. The Vietnamese forces, under the command of Emperor Tran Tai Tong, were outnumbered. They could not match the Mongols in open battle. The capital city of Thang Long was captured by the invading Mongol forces after fierce fighting. This initial success seemed to indicate another swift Mongol conquest. However, the Vietnamese response was strategic and resilient. Instead of engaging in disastrous pitched battles, the Vietnamese adopted a policy of strategic retreat. They evacuated the capital, Thang Long, denying the Mongols a decisive victory and the resources of the city. The Vietnamese forces melted into the countryside, initiating guerrilla warfare tactics. They harassed Mongol supply lines and launched surprise attacks. The tropical climate, unfamiliar diseases, and lack of supplies began to weaken the Mongol army. After holding Thang Long for only a short period, the Mongols were forced to withdraw due to mounting losses and the inhospitable conditions. Both sides learned valuable lessons from this first encounter. Following the first Mongol withdrawal, Đại Việt did not rest. The Tran dynasty, particularly under the brilliant military leadership of Grand Commander Tran Hung Dao, began extensive preparations for future invasions. They knew the Mongols would likely return, and with greater force. Tran Hung Dao worked to unify the nation. He fostered a spirit of resistance among the people. He also studied Mongol military tactics carefully to devise effective countermeasures. Fortifications were strengthened, and the army was reorganized and trained specifically to combat the Mongol threat. The Vietnamese focused on strategies that would use their knowledge of the local terrain to their advantage. The second Mongol invasion began in early 1285. This time, Kublai Khan sent a much larger force, estimated to be around 500,000 strong, under the command of his son, Prince Togan. The invasion came from two directions, aiming to overwhelm Đại Viet's defenses. The Mongols again achieved initial victories. They captured several key locations and once more occupied the capital, Thang Long. The sheer size of the Mongol army was formidable. Their advance seemed relentless. The Vietnamese forces were again forced to avoid direct confrontation with the main Mongol columns, which would have been suicidal. In response to the overwhelming Mongol numbers, the Vietnamese implemented a devastating scorched earth policy. As their forces retreated, they systematically destroyed anything that could be of use to the invaders. Food stores were removed or burned, villages were evacuated and sometimes razed, wells were poisoned. This strategy aimed to deny the Mongols essential supplies and sustenance. The vast Mongol army required enormous amounts of food and fodder for its horses. The scorched earth tactics, combined with the already difficult Vietnamese climate and terrain, began to take a heavy toll on the Mongol war machine. Hunger and disease started to spread through their ranks. Alongside the scorched earth policy, Vietnamese forces, led by Tran Hung Dao and other skilled commanders, intensified their guerrilla warfare. Small, agile units launched constant hit-and-run attacks on Mongol detachments, supply convoys and encampments. They utilized their intimate knowledge of the dense forests, mountains and river systems to appear and disappear quickly. These tactics inflicted steady casualties on the Mongols and severely disrupted their logistics. The Mongol army, designed for large-scale battles on open plains, found it difficult to cope with this asymmetric warfare. The morale of the Mongol troops began to plummet as they faced an elusive enemy and dwindling supplies. Eventually, the Mongols were forced to retreat again. Kublai Khan was infuriated by the repeated failures of his armies in Đại Việt. He was determined to subjugate the resilient Vietnamese kingdom. In late 1287, he launched a third invasion. This was perhaps the largest and best-equipped Mongol force sent against Đại Việt, again under the command of Prince Togan. The invading force included a massive army and a large naval fleet to support the land operations and secure supply lines. Kublai Khan expected this invasion to be the final decisive one. He provided his commanders with ample resources, hoping to crush Vietnamese resistance once and for all. The Mongols advanced with initial success, capturing key coastal areas. The Vietnamese, under the strategic genius of Tran Hung Dao, anticipated the Mongol plan. They knew the Mongol fleet would be crucial for supplying their army. Tran Hung Dao decided to lure the Mongol fleet into a prepared trap. He chose the Bac Dang River as the site for this decisive engagement. This river had been the scene of a famous Vietnamese victory against a Chinese fleet centuries earlier, in 938. The Vietnamese studied the tidal patterns of the river meticulously. They began to prepare the battlefield in secret, a testament to their ingenuity and careful planning. The entire nation was mobilized for this critical defense. The Battle of Bac Dang River took place in the spring of 1288. The Vietnamese forces planted thousands of sharp, iron-tipped wooden stakes into the riverbed. These stakes were hidden beneath the water level during high tide. Tran Hung Dao's plan was to lure the Mongol fleet into the river when the tide was high. Small Vietnamese flotillas engaged the Mongol warships, feigning retreat to draw them deeper into the estuary. The Mongol fleet, confident in its superior numbers and size, pursued the seemingly fleeing Vietnamese boats. They sailed directly into the area where the deadly stakes were concealed. As the tide began to recede, the hidden stakes were revealed. The large, heavy Mongol warships became impaled on the sharp poles. They were trapped, unable to maneuver or escape. At this precise moment, Vietnamese forces, which had been hiding along the riverbanks, launched a massive counterattack. Smaller, more agile Vietnamese boats swarmed the immobilized Mongol vessels. Fire arrows rained down on the Mongol ships. The Mongol fleet was decimated. Thousands of Mongol warriors drowned or were killed. Prince Togan himself barely managed to escape. This resounding victory at Bac Dang River effectively ended the Third Mongol invasion. It was a catastrophic defeat for the Mongols. The Mongol invasions of Đại Việt failed for several interconnected reasons. The brilliant military leadership of figures like Tran Hung Dao was paramount. His strategic thinking, adaptability, and ability to inspire the Vietnamese people were crucial. The Vietnamese employed highly effective strategies tailored to their environment. These included strategic retreats to preserve their forces, scorched earth policies to deny resources to the invaders, and relentless guerrilla warfare to wear down the Mongol armies. The difficult terrain of Vietnam, with its mountains and rivers, and the tropical climate, with its heat and diseases, also played a significant role in hampering the Mongol war machine, which was more accustomed to open plains. The strengths of the Vietnamese approach were numerous. Their national unity, fostered by leaders who prioritized the country's defense, was a powerful asset. The entire populace was often involved in resistance efforts, from soldiers to peasants. The Vietnamese demonstrated remarkable adaptability, learning from each Mongol invasion and refining their tactics accordingly. Their use of environmental warfare, most notably the stakes at Bac Dang River, showcased their ingenuity. They turned their own landscape into a weapon against the invaders. This combination of clever strategy, popular resistance, and effective leadership proved too much for the mighty Mongol Empire to overcome in this specific theater of war. The immediate outcome of these victories was the preservation of Đại Viet's independence. The Tran dynasty successfully defended its sovereignty against one of the most powerful empires in world history. This triumph had an immense psychological impact, boosting Vietnamese national pride and reinforcing their identity as a resilient and independent people. The defeats were a significant blow to Kublai Khan's prestige and marked a limit to Mongol expansion in Southeast Asia. While Đại Việt nominally agreed to a tributary relationship with the Yuan dynasty for a period to maintain peace, it was on terms that recognized their de facto independence and strength. The legacy of these victories is profound and enduring. For Vietnam, the triumphs over the Mongols became legendary episodes in their national history, symbols of their unwavering spirit of resistance against foreign aggression. Tran Hung Dao is still venerated as one of Vietnam's greatest national heroes. The strategies employed by the Vietnamese, particularly the use of guerrilla warfare and exploiting local conditions, have been studied by military historians worldwide. These campaigns demonstrate how a smaller, determined nation can successfully resist a much larger and more powerful aggressor through intelligent strategy, strong leadership, and the will of its people. The Mongol defeats in Vietnam remain a significant chapter in world military history.